No one expected that among dozens of well-dressed candidates, a humble young woman would appear barefoot, holding a baby in her arms and wearing tattered clothes. What happened in that interview room would change not only her life, but also that of the millionaire who watched her in silence. Before we start, I'd like to know your opinion about this video. When you finish watching, you can leave a simple comment below. Please like this video and follow our channel for more content. The grey Seattle morning matched Sarah Chen's mood perfectly as she stood outside the gleaming towers of Wellington Tech, her 6-month-old daughter Emma crying softly against her shoulder. The October rain had soaked through her only interview outfit, a thrift store blazer that had seen better days and scuffed shoes that squeaked with every nervous step. "Please stop crying, baby," Sarah whispered, bouncing Emma gently while checking her phone. 9:47 a.m. She was 13 minutes early for what might be the most important interview of her life. The administrative assistant position paid enough to finally move out of the cramped studio apartment she shared with 2 other struggling mothers. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, she could see the bustling lobby filled with sharp-dressed professionals, carrying expensive coffee and speaking into wireless earbuds. Everyone looked like they belonged in this world of success and prosperity. Everything Sarah desperately wanted to be part of, but felt impossibly distant from achieving. A businessman in a tailored suit glanced her way, his expression shifting from curiosity to subtle disapproval as he noticed the baby carrier and her obviously inexpensive clothes. Sarah felt heat creep up her neck. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe she should have found a babysitter, borrowed better clothes, or simply accepted that some opportunities weren't meant for people like her. But then Emma's tiny hand wrapped around Sarah's finger, and she remembered why she was here. This job represented more than just income. It was hope for a better future, a chance to provide stability for her daughter, and proof that hard work could overcome circumstances. Taking a deep breath, Sarah pushed through the revolving doors into the lobby. The marble floors reflected the morning light streaming through massive windows, and the subtle hum of productivity filled the air. A receptionist with perfect makeup and an immaculate white shirt looked up from her computer screen. "Good morning. How can I help you?" Her smile faltered slightly when she noticed the baby. "I'm Sarah Chen. I have a 10 o'clock appointment with Human Resources for the administrative assistant position." Sarah shifted Emma to her other arm, trying to project confidence despite feeling completely out of place. The receptionist's fingers clicked across her keyboard. "Oh yes, here you are. Take the elevator to the 32nd floor, Ms. Rodriguez will meet you there." She handed Sarah a visitor's badge, her professional smile firmly back in place. As the elevator ascended, Sarah caught her reflection in the polished steel doors. Dark circles under her eyes from Emma's restless nights, hair that needed professional styling she couldn't afford, and clothes that announced her financial struggles to anyone paying attention. She looked exactly like what she was, a young mother doing her best with limited resources. The 32nd floor opened to reveal a sophisticated waiting area with leather chairs and abstract artwork. Ms. Rodriguez, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a warm smile, emerged from a corner office. "Sarah, I'm Carmen Rodriguez, Director of Human Resources. Thank you for coming in today." Her gaze moved to Emma, and Sarah braced herself for the inevitable disappointment. But Carmen's expression remained welcoming. "What a beautiful baby. How old is she?" 6 months, Sarah replied, surprised by the genuine interest. "I'm sorry I had to bring her. My childcare arrangements fell through at the last minute, and I couldn't reschedule without losing this opportunity." "No worries at all. These things happen. Why don't we step into my office?" Carmen led them into a comfortable room overlooking the city. "Can I get you anything? Coffee, water, Water would be wonderful, thank you. Sarah settled into the chair across from Carmen's desk, adjusting Emma in her lap. The baby had finally stopped crying and was now gazing around the room with wide, curious eyes. Carmen returned with a bottle of water and sat down, opening a folder. "I've reviewed your application, and I'm impressed by your academic achievements. A 3. 8 GPA in business administration while working part-time is remarkable. Tell me what interests you about this position." For the next 20 minutes, Sarah found herself relaxing as Carmen asked thoughtful questions about her experience, goals, and availability. The conversation felt natural and encouraging, and Sarah began to believe she might actually have a chance at this job. Then Emma started fussing again, her tiny whimpers growing louder despite Sarah's gentle shushing and rocking motions. "I'm so sorry," Sarah said, standing to walk around the room while bouncing Emma. "She's usually much calmer than this." "It's perfectly fine. Babies have their own schedules." Carmen smiled sympathetically. "You know what? I'd like you to meet someone. The CEO happened to be in the building today, and he likes to personally approve all new hires for key administrative positions. Would you be comfortable with that?" Sarah's stomach dropped. Meeting the CEO while holding a crying baby seemed like a recipe for disaster, but she couldn't refuse without appearing unprofessional. "Of course, I'd be honored." Carmen made a quick phone call, speaking in hushed tones before hanging up. "He'll see you now. His office is just down the hall." As they walked toward the corner office, Sarah's anxiety spiked. She'd researched Marcus Wellington extensively, a brilliant, ruthless businessman who'd built his tech empire from nothing. Magazine articles described him as demanding, perfectionist, and completely focused on results. He was exactly the type of person who would view her current situation as a liability rather than understanding the challenges of single motherhood. The office doors were solid oak, with brass nameplate reading, "Marcus Wellington, Chief Executive Officer." Carmen knocked twice before opening the door. "Mr. Wellington, I'd like you to meet Sarah Chen, our candidate for the administrative assistant position." Marcus Wellington stood with his back to the door, silhouetted against floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased Seattle's skyline. Even from behind, his presence commanded attention. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a perfectly tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than Sarah made in 3 months. When he turned around, Sarah was struck by his piercing blue eyes and sharp jawline that belonged in a magazine spread rather than a corporate office. But those eyes quickly moved from her face to Emma, and she watched his expression shift from polite interest to visible discomfort. "Ms. Chen." His voice was deep and measured, professional but noticeably cooler than Carmen's had been. "I understand you're interested in joining our team." "Yes, sir. Thank you for taking the time to meet with me." Sarah shifted Emma to her other arm, acutely aware of how the baby's presence seemed to fill the room with tension. Marcus gestured toward a chair facing his massive desk, then moved to sit across from her. His office was a monument to success, awards lining the walls, photos with politicians and celebrities, and technology prototypes displayed on sleek shelving units. Everything spoke of precision, control, and an unwavering focus on excellence. Emma chose that moment to let out a loud cry, her tiny voice echoing off the high ceilings. Sarah felt her face flush with embarrassment as she stood quickly, bouncing and shushing her daughter. "I'm terribly sorry, Mr. Wellington. She's usually much better behaved than this. I can try to—" "Sit down, Ms. Chen." His command was quiet, but firm. "Tell me about your experience with project management and client relations." Sarah attempted to answer his questions while simultaneously trying to calm Emma, whose cries were growing more insistent. She could see Marcus's jaw tightening with each wail, his fingers drumming impatiently against his desk. This was going even worse than she'd feared. "Have you ever worked in a high-pressure environment where absolute discretion and professionalism are required?" Marcus asked, his gaze pointedly moving between Sarah and the increasingly agitated baby. "Yes, sir. In my previous position at Morrison Insurance, I handled confidential client files and—" Emma's screams reached a new pitch, completely drowning out Sarah's words. The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus stared at them both, his expression unreadable, but clearly indicating his displeasure with the entire situation. Sarah felt her dream job slipping away with each passing second. "Mr. Wellington, I sincerely apologize. Perhaps we could reschedule this meeting for a time when I have proper childcare arrangements." Sarah stood again, preparing to gather her things and leave before she could embarrass herself further. "Sit down." "Adi," the sharpness in his voice made her freeze. "You came here seeking employment. The least you can do is show enough respect to complete the interview process." Sarah sank back into the chair, feeling utterly defeated. Emma was now crying so hard that her tiny face had turned red, and nothing Sarah tried seemed to help. She rocked, she hummed, she offered a pacifier that Emma promptly spit out. Other employees were probably hearing the commotion and wondering what kind of unprofessional person would bring a baby to a corporate interview. Marcus watched this struggle in silence, his expression growing more stern by the minute. When Emma's cries reached what seemed like their absolute peak, he finally spoke again. "How long have you been a single mother, Ms. Chen?" The unexpected question caught Sarah off guard. "6 months, sir, since Emma was born." "And the father?" Sarah's throat tightened. This was exactly the kind of personal question that could derail her chances completely, but lying seemed pointless when her situation was so obviously challenging. "He left when he found out I was pregnant. Said he wasn't ready for that kind of responsibility." Marcus nodded slowly, his fingers still drumming against the desk. "And you've been managing alone since then?" "Yes, sir. With some help from other mothers in my building, but mostly alone." Emma's cries had softened to hiccups, but Sarah could feel the baby working up to another round of screaming. "What makes you think you can handle the demands of this position while managing single motherhood?" His question wasn't cruel, but it was direct and challenging. Sarah looked down at Emma's tear-stained face, then back up at Marcus. She could give him the answer she thought he wanted to hear, or she could tell him the truth about why this job meant everything to her. "Because I have to, Mr. Wellington. I don't have the luxury of failing. Emma depends on me for everything: food, shelter, her future opportunities. This job represents the difference between barely surviving and actually building a life for both of us. I know I can excel in this position because I understand what's at stake if I don't." Marcus leaned back in his chair, studying her with those penetrating blue eyes. Emma had finally quieted, seemingly exhausted from her crying fit, and was now making soft cooing sounds while grabbing at Sarah's necklace. "You realize this position requires long hours, frequent overtime, and complete reliability. There's no room for childcare emergencies or family complications interfering with your professional responsibilities." "I understand that completely, sir. I've already researched several reputable daycares in the area, and I have backup arrangements in place. My commitment to this position would be absolute." For a long moment, the only sound in the office was the gentle tick of an expensive clock on Marcus's bookshelf. He continued to stare at them both, his expression impossible to read. Sarah could practically feel her chances dissolving in the uncomfortable silence. Then Emma did something unexpected. She looked directly at Marcus and gave him the biggest, most radiant smile Sarah had ever seen her daughter produce. It was the kind of pure, joyful expression that could melt even the coldest heart. Marcus's stern facade faltered for just a split second, something vulnerable flickering across his features before he quickly composed himself again. But Sarah had seen it, a crack in the armor that surrounded this powerful man. Ms. Rodriguez tells me you graduated summa cum laude despite working part-time throughout college. Yes, sir. I needed to support myself, but education was always my priority. And you maintained a 3.8 GPA while working 25 hours a week. Yes, sir. Marcus stood abruptly and moved back to the windows, his hands clasped behind his back. The administrative assistant position requires someone who can anticipate needs, manage complex schedules, and maintain absolute confidentiality regarding sensitive business matters. Are you prepared for that level of responsibility? Absolutely, Mr. Wellington. I thrive in environments that challenge me to grow and contribute meaningfully. He remained silent for what felt like an eternity, staring out at the Seattle skyline while Sarah held her breath. Emma had begun making happy babbling sounds, completely oblivious to the tension filling the room. When Marcus finally turned back around, his expression was carefully neutral. "Miss Chen, I'm going to make you an offer." Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs as Marcus Wellington returned to his desk, his movements deliberate and controlled. Emma gurgled contentedly in her arms, apparently fascinated by the afternoon light streaming through the massive windows. "However," Marcus continued, settling into his leather chair, "it's not the position you applied for." Sarah's stomach dropped. He was about to offer her some lesser role, probably part-time filing or data entry, something that wouldn't provide the income she desperately needed. She forced herself to maintain eye contact despite her disappointment. "I need a personal executive assistant. Someone who can manage my calendar, coordinate meetings with international clients, handle confidential correspondence, and essentially serve as the gatekeeper for my office." Marcus leaned forward, his piercing gaze never leaving her face. "The position requires absolute discretion, the ability to work under intense pressure, and complete reliability." Sarah blinked, certain she'd misheard. Personal executive assistant to the CEO was several levels above what she'd applied for and would pay significantly more. "Mr. Wellington, I'm honored by your confidence, but I should mention that I don't have experience at that level. Experience can be taught. Integrity and determination cannot." He opened a drawer and pulled out a contract. "The salary is $85,000 annually, plus full benefits including health insurance, dental, and a retirement contribution plan. There's also a discretionary bonus structure based on performance." $85,000. Sarah had been hoping for $45,000 from the administrative position. This was life-changing money, enough to move into a safe neighborhood, provide proper childcare for Emma, and maybe even start saving for her daughter's future education. I don't understand. Why would you offer me such an important position when I came here for an entry-level job?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his fingers drumming slowly against the desk. When he spoke, his voice was softer than it had been throughout the entire interview. 12 years ago, I was in a similar situation to yours, Ms. Chen. Single parent, desperate for opportunity, trying to prove myself while everyone around me saw only limitations and complications." He paused, something painful flickering across his features. "Someone took a chance on me when logic suggested they shouldn't. It changed everything." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. She'd been so focused on his stern demeanor and obvious success that she'd never considered he might understand her struggles from personal experience. "However," Marcus continued, his business tone returning, "I need to be absolutely clear about expectations. This position will demand everything you have to give. 14-hour days are common. International calls at unusual hours are routine. When I'm traveling for business, you'll essentially be running point on my behalf. Can you handle that level of responsibility?" "Yes, sir. Absolutely." Sarah's voice was stronger now, filled with genuine confidence rather than desperate hope. Emma chose that moment to reach toward Marcus, her tiny hands grasping at the air as if she wanted to grab his expensive tie. Sarah quickly pulled her back, but not before Marcus noticed the gesture. "There's one more thing." Marcus stood and moved around his desk, stopping just a few feet away from them. My daughter would have been about Emma's age now. The simple statement hung in the air like a physical presence. Sarah felt something shift in the room's atmosphere, a vulnerability that Marcus clearly didn't share often or easily. "Would have been?" Sarah asked softly. Marcus's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "She died at birth. Complications during delivery. Her mother didn't survive either." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. She looked down at Emma's innocent face, then back up at Marcus, finally understanding the source of his earlier discomfort and the reason behind his unexpected offer. "Mr. Wellington, I'm so sorry. I can't imagine. It was a long time ago." He cut her off, but not unkindly. "The point is, I know what it means to fight for something that matters more than yourself. When I see someone else doing the same thing, I respect it." Silence settled over the office again, but this time it felt different, charged with understanding rather than tension. Emma made a soft, cooing sound and smiled again, her eyes bright with curiosity as she studied this powerful man who was offering to change their lives. "There is one condition," Marcus said, returning to his professional demeanor. "You'll need to start immediately, tomorrow morning, 7:30 sharp. My previous assistant left with 2 weeks' notice, and I have board meetings scheduled for the rest of the week." "Tomorrow?" Sarah's mind raced. She'd need to find childcare, arrange transportation, figure out professional clothes that didn't come from thrift stores, but somehow she'd make it work. She always did. "Is that a problem?" "No, sir. I'll be here." Marcus nodded and extended his hand. "Welcome to Wellington Tech, Ms. Chen. Don't make me regret this decision." Sarah shifted Emma to her left arm and shook his hand, feeling the strength and confidence in his grip. "You won't, Mr. Wellington. I promise you won't." As she gathered her things and prepared to leave, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that this moment would prove to be a turning point, not just for her and Emma, but somehow for Marcus Wellington as well. The successful CEO who had everything money could buy, but carried wounds that success couldn't heal. Walking toward the elevator with Carmen, Sarah glanced back once to see Marcus standing at his windows again, his silhouette somehow less imposing than it had been an hour ago. Emma waved her tiny hand in his direction, and Sarah could have sworn she saw him smile, just barely, but enough to suggest that beneath his carefully constructed armor beat the heart of someone who understood exactly what it meant to fight for something worth saving. The elevator doors closed, and Sarah felt her new life beginning. Tomorrow would bring challenges she couldn't yet imagine, but for the first time in months she felt hope blooming in her chest, like a flower finally finding sunlight after a long, dark winter. 3 weeks into her new position, Sarah had transformed Marcus Wellington's chaotic schedule into a perfectly orchestrated symphony of efficiency. She arrived each morning at 7:15, 15 minutes before required, with Emma safely settled at Bright Horizons Daycare, just 6 blocks away. The executive suite on the 32nd floor had become her domain. Sarah's desk, positioned strategically outside Marcus's office, commanded a view of everyone who sought access to the CEO. Her computer screens displayed multiple calendars, international time zones, and a complex tracking system she'd developed for his various business ventures. "Good morning, Mr. Wellington," Sarah said, as Marcus emerged from the private elevator that led directly to his office. "Your conference call with the Tokyo investors is in 20 minutes. I've prepared the quarterly reports you requested, and the contracts from Patterson Industries are ready for your review." Marcus paused at her desk, accepting the perfectly organized folder she offered. Over the past weeks, he'd grown accustomed to this level of seamless preparation, but it still impressed him how quickly Sarah had adapted to his demanding standards. Any word from Senator Mitchell's office about the infrastructure meeting? Confirmed for Thursday at 2 p.m. His aide specifically requested the presentation materials we discussed, so I've coordinated with the development team to have everything ready by Wednesday evening. Sarah's fingers moved efficiently across her keyboard as she spoke. Also, your mother called. She'd like you to call her back when you have a free moment. Marcus's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. Schedule that for this evening after 6. Anything else? Jennifer Harrison from The Times wants to schedule an interview about the new education initiative. She's persistent. This is her 4th call this week. Keep deflecting. I'm not ready to discuss that publicly yet. Marcus headed toward his office, then stopped. How's Emma adjusting to daycare? The question surprised Sarah, as it always did. Despite his professional demeanor, Marcus occasionally asked about her daughter with what seemed like genuine interest rather than polite courtesy. She loves it. The staff says she's remarkably social for her age, always smiling at the other children and caregivers. Sarah smiled, her maternal pride evident. Thank you for asking. Marcus nodded and disappeared into his office, leaving Sarah to wonder, not for the first time, about the man behind the corporate facade. Their interactions remained strictly professional, but she'd begun to notice small things, the way his voice softened when he mentioned Emma, how he sometimes stared out his windows with an expression of deep sadness, and the framed photograph on his bookshelf that he thought no one could see from certain angles. The morning progressed with its usual intensity. Sarah fielded calls from investors, reporters, and government officials, each requiring a different level of access and information. She'd developed an instinct for reading Marcus's mood and energy levels, knowing when to interrupt with urgent matters and when to handle situations independently. At noon, Carmen Rodriguez appeared at Sarah's desk with a warm smile and 2 cups of coffee. You look like you could use a break, Carmen said, settling into the chair across from Sarah's desk. How are you holding up? Better than I expected, honestly. Sarah accepted the coffee gratefully. Mr. Wellington is demanding, but he's also fair. And the work is fascinating. I feel like I'm getting a masterclass in business strategy every day. Carmen lowered her voice conspiratorially. Between you and me, you've impressed everyone. Marcus has never had an assistant who lasted more than 6 months, let alone one who actually improved his productivity. Really? What happened to the others? Burnout mostly. The pressure gets to people, but you seem to thrive on it. Carmen paused, studying Sarah's face. There's something else. Marcus has been different since you started. Less intense, more human. Before Sarah could respond, her phone rang with an international number. Wellington Tech, Mr. Wellington's office, this is Sarah. Ah, the famous Sarah Chen. The voice carried a slight German accent. This is Klaus Weber from Weber Industries. I understand you're the miracle worker who actually keeps Marcus organized. Sarah glanced toward Marcus's closed office door. Mr. Weber, how can I help you today? I need to speak with Marcus about the Munich project. It's quite urgent. He's in a meeting with the development team, but I can interrupt if it's critical. Yes, please. Tell him it's about the Richardson contract. He'll understand. Sarah put Klaus on hold and knocked on Marcus's door. Mr. Wellington, Klaus Weber on line 1. He mentioned the Richardson contract. Marcus's head snapped up, his expression shifting to something Sarah had never seen before. Not anger, but a complex mixture of anticipation and apprehension. I'll take it. He reached for his phone, then paused. Sarah, I need you to clear my schedule for the rest of the afternoon. Cancel the 3 o'clock with Peterson, reschedule the budget review for tomorrow, and hold all calls, unless it's an absolute emergency. Of course. Is everything all right? Marcus was already reaching for his phone. Close the door behind you. For the next 2 hours, Sarah could hear Marcus's voice through his office walls, sometimes raised in animated discussion, sometimes dropping to whispers that suggested highly confidential negotiations. She fielded the cancelled appointments with professional efficiency while wondering what could possibly require such intense secrecy. At 4:30, Marcus's door opened abruptly. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his tie loosened, and his expression was unlike anything Sarah had seen before. Excited, nervous, and determined all at once. "Sarah, I need you to book me on the next available flight to Munich. Tonight, if possible, tomorrow morning at the latest." "How long will you be gone?" "I'll need to reschedule. 3 days, maybe 4. And Sarah?" Marcus paused, meeting her eyes directly. "This trip is completely confidential. If anyone asks, I'm dealing with a family emergency." That evening, as Sarah organized Marcus's travel documents and prepared briefing materials for his absence, she couldn't shake the feeling that something significant was shifting. The Richardson contract meant nothing to her, but Marcus's reaction suggested it represented far more than a routine business deal. Her phone buzzed with a text message as she gathered her things to leave. "Thank you for your discretion today. Take care of things while I'm gone. M.W." It was the first personal message he'd ever sent her, and something about its tone suggested that when Marcus returned from Munich, everything might be different. Sarah didn't hear from Marcus for 48 hours after his departure, which was unprecedented. Usually, he called multiple times per day from business trips, requesting information, giving instructions, or checking on urgent matters. His silence left her managing increasingly agitated board members, frustrated clients, and mounting questions about his whereabouts. "Mr. Wellington's office." Sarah answered her phone for what felt like the 100th time that morning. "Sarah, this is David Richardson from Richardson Holdings." The voice was crisp, authoritative, and somehow familiar, though Sarah was certain they'd never spoken. "I need to speak with Marcus immediately." Sarah checked her notes. No Richardson Holdings in Marcus's client database, no scheduled meetings, no previous correspondence, yet something about the name nagged at her memory. "I'm sorry, Mr. Richardson, but Mr. Wellington is unavailable. May I take a message or schedule a call for when he returns?" "When he returns." "Sarah, where exactly is Marcus right now?" The question's intensity surprised her. "I'm not able to share Mr. Wellington's travel details, but I can—" "Listen to me very carefully," Richardson interrupted, his tone sharp with urgency. "I know Marcus is in Munich. I know he's meeting with Klaus Weber, and I know why. What I need to know is whether he's made any decisions yet." Sarah's hand tightened on the phone. This man knew details about Marcus's confidential trip that she hadn't shared with anyone. "Mr. Richardson, I'm going to need you to explain how you have this information before I can— because I'm his father, Sarah." The words hit her like a physical blow. In 3 weeks of managing Marcus's life, she'd never heard him mention his father. His mother called occasionally, but there had been no indication that his father was involved in his life, let alone his business. "His father? But your last name is Richardson." "It's complicated. Look, I don't have time to explain family dynamics right now. Marcus is about to make a decision that will affect everything, his company, his future, his ability to ever have the life he deserves. I need to talk to him before it's too late." Sarah's mind raced. Richardson contract, Klaus Weber, the urgent secrecy surrounding Marcus's trip. Pieces of a puzzle she hadn't even known existed were suddenly clicking into place. "Mr. Richardson, I truly cannot—" Her phone beeped with an incoming international call. "Hold on, please." She glanced at the caller ID, Marcus's cell phone. "Mr. Wellington, thank goodness, I've been—" "Sarah," Marcus's voice sounded strained, exhausted. "I need you to do something for me, and I need you to do it without asking questions." "Of course. What do you need?" "Go to my office. In the bottom drawer of my desk, there's a locked metal box. The combination is Emma's birthday, 0624. Inside, you'll find a legal document. I need you to scan it and email it to Klaus Weber immediately. Sarah was already moving toward his office, her heart pounding with a mixture of confusion and growing dread. Marcus, David Richardson is on the other line. He says he's your father and that he needs to speak with you urgently. The silence that followed was so complete that Sarah wondered if the call had dropped. Marcus, are you there? He called the office. Marcus's voice was barely above a whisper. Yes, he seems to know about your trip, about Klaus Weber. He said you're about to make a decision that will affect everything. Another long pause. Sarah reached Marcus's desk and found the metal box exactly where he'd described. Her fingers trembled slightly as she entered Emma's birthday into the combination lock. Sarah, listen to me carefully. Do not put that call through. Do not give David Richardson any information about my whereabouts or my business. Send the document to Klaus as I requested, then go home early. Take tomorrow off if you need to. Marcus, what's going on? You're scaring me. The box opened with a soft click, revealing a thick legal document with official seals and signatures. Even upside down, Sarah could see it was some kind of adoption paperwork dated 12 years ago. Some stories are more complicated than they appear, Sarah. Sometimes the people who claim to want what's best for you are the same ones who've been standing in your way your entire life. Sarah's hands shook as she lifted the document. At the top of the first page, in bold legal text, she read, "Adoption Decree Final Order," followed by names that made her stomach drop. Marcus David Richardson, and below it, Legal Guardian David Richardson. Marcus, this adoption document. Just send it to Klaus, please. I'll explain everything when I get back. The line went dead, leaving Sarah staring at papers that revealed a truth Marcus had clearly never intended for her to discover. The successful CEO who'd built an empire from nothing wasn't a self-made man at all. He was David Richardson's adopted son, and apparently there was a battle being fought that she'd stumbled into the middle of. Her other phone line was still blinking with David Richardson's call on hold. A man who'd been waiting 20 minutes to speak with his son and who claimed Marcus was about to make a life-altering mistake. Sarah looked at the adoption document in her hands, then at the blinking phone line, then at the email address Klaus Weber had provided during their previous conversations. For the first time since starting this job, she had to choose between following Marcus's explicit instructions and potentially protecting him from a decision he might regret forever. Her finger hovered over the send button on the scanned document, while David Richardson's call continued to blink urgently on her phone. The next 60 seconds would change everything, and Sarah suddenly understood that she wasn't just Marcus Wellington's executive assistant. She was the guardian of secrets that could destroy or save the life of a man she was only beginning to understand. Sarah made her choice. Instead of hitting send, she picked up the blinking phone line. "Mr. Richardson, I'm going to break protocol and tell you that Marcus asked me to send a legal document to Klaus Weber. Before I do that, I need to understand what's really happening." Thank God. Sarah, listen carefully. 12 years ago, I made the worst mistake of my life. When Marcus was 17, his mother, my wife, died in a car accident. In my grief, I blamed him. Not rationally, not fairly, but I couldn't look at him without seeing her. I sent him away to boarding school and essentially cut him out of my life. Sarah sank into her chair, the adoption document still clutched in her hands. But you adopted him. When he was 8, his birth parents died in a house fire. Patricia and I, my wife, we couldn't have children of our own. Marcus was this brilliant, broken little boy who needed a family, and we needed someone to love. For 9 years, he was our son, in every way that mattered. And then Then Patricia died, and I became a different person. Marcus built Wellington Tech using a trust fund his birth parents had left him, money I never touched because I was too proud to benefit from his success. But now Klaus Weber has convinced him that the only way to truly succeed is to cut all ties with his past, including me. Sarah looked at the document again, understanding dawning. This is his adoption decree. If he sends this to Klaus, Klaus is helping him legally change his name back to his birth name and transfer all his assets to a European shell company. He'll disappear, Sarah. Completely. No more Marcus Wellington. No more connection to Seattle. No more family. He thinks it's the only way to be free from the pain of his past. But it's not. David's voice broke slightly. 3 weeks ago, I was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. I have maybe 6 months, and I've spent every one of those days trying to find the courage to call my son and apologize for 12 years of cowardice and stupidity. Sarah felt tears spring to her eyes. He doesn't know. How could he? I abandoned him when he needed me most. But Sarah, if he goes through with this legal dissolution, I'll die without ever being able to tell him that I love him, that I'm proud of him, and that losing Patricia was never his fault. The weight of the decision pressed down on Sarah's shoulders. Marcus had explicitly told her not to put the call through, to send the document immediately, but she thought about the man she'd worked with for 3 weeks. Brilliant, wounded, carrying invisible scars that made him treat a crying baby with such unexpected gentleness. Mr. Richardson, I'm going to do something that might cost me my job. What? I'm going to conference you into a call with Marcus right now. What you say to each other is between you and him, but he needs to know about your diagnosis before he makes this decision. Sarah's hands moved quickly across her phone system, dialing Marcus's international number while keeping David on the line. Her heart pounded as she waited for the connection. Sarah, did you send the document? Marcus's voice was tense. Marcus, your father is on this call. He has something to tell you that you need to hear. The silence stretched so long that Sarah wondered if one of them had hung up. Finally, Marcus spoke, his voice cold and controlled. I have nothing to say to you, David. Son, please, just listen for 60 seconds. That's all I'm asking. I'm not your son. I haven't been your son for 12 years. You made that clear when you sent me away after Mum's funeral. You're right, I did, and it was the worst mistake I've ever made in my life. David's voice was steady despite the emotion behind it. Marcus, I'm dying. Pancreatic cancer. I have maybe 6 months left. The sharp intake of breath from Marcus was audible even through the international connection. I'm not telling you this to manipulate you or to stop you from whatever you're planning with Klaus. I'm telling you because I need you to know that every day for 12 years I've regretted sending you away. Your mother's death wasn't your fault. My grief wasn't your responsibility. And the man you've become, brilliant, successful, stronger than I ever was, you became that despite my failures, not because of them. David. Marcus's voice was barely a whisper. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know I lost the right to call you my son a long time ago. But before you disappear forever, I needed you to know that I love you. I've always loved you, and I'm prouder of you than any father has a right to be. Sarah wiped tears from her cheeks as she listened to the raw emotion flowing between the two men. Through her office windows, Seattle's skyline blurred as she realized she was witnessing something sacred, the potential healing of a wound that had shaped Marcus's entire adult life. You're really dying? Marcus asked finally. Yes. How long? The doctors said 3 to 6 months. Another long silence. Sarah could hear Marcus breathing heavily, could imagine him standing in some Munich hotel room, processing information that changed everything he thought he knew about his future. Klaus is expecting that document in 20 minutes, Marcus said eventually. I know. And if that's what you truly want, if cutting ties with your past is the only way you can move forward, then I'll understand. But Marcus, don't do it because you think I don't love you. Don't do it because you're still carrying guilt about your mother's death. Do it only if it's really what your heart wants." Sarah held her breath, waiting for Marcus's response. The decision he made in the next few moments would determine not just his own future, but whether a dying man would spend his final months knowing his son had forgiven him. "Sarah?" Marcus's voice was stronger now, more certain. "Yes?" "Delete that document. Don't send it to Klaus." "Dear, you sure?" "I'm sure, and Sarah, when I get back tomorrow night, I'd like you to arrange dinner for 3 people. You, me, and David. It's time for my family to meet the person who's been taking better care of me than I've been taking care of myself." Sarah smiled through her tears. "I'd be honored to arrange that, Mr. Wellington." "Now call me Marcus. And David." "Yes, son? We have a lot to talk about, but first you're going to meet your granddaughter Emma. Fair warning, she's got a smile that can change your whole perspective on life." As Sarah listened to father and son begin the delicate process of rebuilding their relationship, she realized that her decision to bring a crying baby to a corporate interview had set in motion something far more important than her career. Sometimes the most powerful transformations begin with the smallest acts of courage, and sometimes the family you need most is the one you thought you'd lost forever. 6 months later, as David Richardson held Emma while receiving his final round of treatment, he would tell Sarah that her courage to make one phone call had given him the most precious gift imaginable, the chance to be a grandfather and to see his son discover that love and success weren't mutually exclusive after all. But that's a story for another day. Today was about second chances, forgiveness, and the miracle that happens when broken hearts finally find the courage to heal.